I'm calling to order the special town council meeting 5 p.m. on October 13th. Michelle, we do a roll call, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Goddard.
I am here.
Councilmember Ackerman.
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Cutrano.
Present.
Councilmember Kohler on Zoom.
I'm here.
And Mayor Hellman on Zoom.
I am here.
Thank you.
Terrific. Sorry, I'm just getting still a little bit organized here. Vice Mayor, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Oh, absolutely. Mayor, would you like me to read the or do approval of the agenda, or
yeah, I'd love a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, motion passes. And
can I ask a protocol question?
Sure.
Since two of us are on Zoom, do we have to do roll call votes? I'm asking the clerk.
Yes, I was just going to interrupt and ask about that myself. So I can do a quick roll call. Councilmember Kohler.
Aye.
Councilmember Goddard.
Aye.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cutrano.
Aye.
And Mayor Hellman.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, Councilmember Goddard, are you, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
It would be a privilege. The Fairfax Town Council acknowledges that we are located on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people of present-day Marin County. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging.
Thank you. Moving on to the meeting protocol. The mayor shall maintain order at the meeting. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. Kindly turn off your cell phones or place them in silent mode. The town council will review the agenda at 10 p.m. to ascertain which items, if any, will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started by 11:30 will be continued to an adjourned or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend this rule. We have one item on the regular agenda this evening, and Heather or David, would you like to present, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'd be pleased to present this project this evening. My name is David Woltering. I'm the interim Planning and Building Services Director for the town of Fairfax. With this agenda item this evening, town staff is recommending that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with Diet and Bhatia urban and regional planners to complete the town's 6th cycle housing element and general plan update project. As our community is well aware, we've been working with this update since about April of 2021. This state mandated housing element update is the 6th cycle. It's 2023 through 2031. And as compared to prior cycles, this cycle, this 6th cycle, has many rigorous and exacting requirements. And it's a challenge. And I think we have found in consultation with our colleagues in Southern California who have gone before us in terms of going through the state process with state housing and community development, most of the Southern California jurisdictions were not able to complete their projects, their housing element updates in a timely manner by the compliance date of October 15th, 2021. And as those jurisdictions worked with HCD representatives, going through the very rigorous requirements and exacting reviews, many of those jurisdictions went through multiple reviews. Ultimately, there was a 1-year extension given to the Southern California jurisdictions. As our staff has been in contact with HCD representatives and as we've attended legislative updates, we're not sure, in fact, we're not sure at all that Northern California communities will likewise be given an extension. At this point, here in this community of Fairfax, there's been much work done. You have gone through a sites analysis. You've identified 19 sites to attempt to achieve, at least on paper, the regional housing needs allocation assigned to this community. And overall, the state has determined the number of new housing units it would like to see facilitated for development over this next 8-year period in this state. Here in Fairfax, during the 5th cycle, this past cycle, your assignment was 60 units plus a carryover about 80 units from the prior cycle. However, consistent with other communities, other jurisdictions in the state of California, the numbers have increased dramatically, which is a challenge to find the sites, the suitable sites to yield the numbers and to yield numbers that also would provide affordable units. Under this current cycle, this 6th cycle, 2023 through 2031, the RHNA assignment to Fairfax is 490 units plus a buffer of 20%. That's substantially, dramatically higher than the 60 plus the 80 carryover of the past cycle. Other challenges and statutory requirements. Communities are not only required to identify suitable sites within their jurisdictions to achieve those numbers, the RHNA numbers, they also must be suitable in terms of being able to yield the units and at the affordability levels assigned. The idea is to demonstrate that you can provide housing units for all economic sectors, from the very low all the way through the above moderate. And so that is a challenge. In addition, communities are required to adopt and implement objective design and development standards. And the idea with the ODDS, objective design and development standards, is that with these in place, and if property owners comply with these design and development standards, there would be streamlining offered in terms of being able to move a development project through the approval process in a much more streamlined manner, assuming compliance with those design and development standards and affordable housing units as a part of that. In addition, with this cycle, this 6th cycle, there's the requirement that there be plans and policies and programs put in place to demonstrate in your housing element that you're affirmatively furthering fair housing opportunities, that you're working away from patterns of segregation and really assuring that housing is integrated and you have balanced living patterns. This is AB 686, so compliance with AB 686. So those are a few examples of the 6th cycle. The dramatically higher RHNA numbers, the ODDS, AFFH, affirmatively furthering fair housing, and really the exacting review by HCD representatives of the identified sites to meet the RHNA, to make sure that they're suitable in terms of yielding the units and at the affordability levels identified. So here in Fairfax, there's been a fair amount of work done, but we're behind the schedule. At this point, we have draft ODDS. We have a draft safety element, which is also a part of the overall process. We've begun the CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act process, which is required. An environmental review of your housing element and associated updates is required. That's been begun. But at this point, we do not have a draft housing element. The odds, safety element, and other documents need to be finalized, and we've only begun CEQA. We've had challenges in terms of maintaining our timeline, yet we've completed a lot of work. We've had challenges in terms of keeping current, accurate information on our website, informing our citizens of progress on this project. However, we have done quite a bit of work. Before us, though, we have to complete the housing element. At this point, we do not have an administrative draft, a full administrative draft. We have to complete a full environmental impact report. We have to finalize the safety element. We have to finalize the odds. And as I've described already, we have to go through the exacting State Housing and Community Development Review process, HCD review process, which, as we know from our colleagues in Southern California, is exacting. At this point, given where we are, and for the ABAG, Associated Bay Area Communities, Bay Area Government Communities, our timeline for completing is January 31st, 2023, with a 120-day grace period, which takes us out to May 31st, 2023. So let's look at May 31, 2023, assuming the grace period. Given all the work that's been done, and there's been a lot done, at this point, our staff is recommending that you move forward with the consulting team of Diet and Bhatia. It's an Oakland firm. They've got 40 years of experience. The project manager that would be assigned here is Andrew Hill. He's got at least 15 years of experience in project management. Michael Diet, one of the principals and co-founders, would be directly involved, as well as other staff members. All of that information is in the packet in their proposal. Our sense is that in terms of maintaining a timeline to complete this project, and it will be a challenge, no question, by May 31st, 2023, as currently determined. Maintaining a timeline, assuring clear, up-to-date, current communication on our website with our community members, assuring appropriate and timely project management, assuring that we have the team that we need to work through a very exacting HCD review process to get us to the end. We're recommending again that you move forward with authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement to complete this project, the housing element update, general plan update project, with the firm of Diet and Bhatia, urban and regional planners. In terms of budget, the budget that is indicated in the proposal is attached to the staff report along with the agreement. The budget amount is a total, and I'm going to include the 10% contingency because I think we need to do that. It is a contingency, but the total with contingency is $621,924. The base budget amount is $565,385. This is in the staff report, plus $56,539 as a 10% contingency. As Diet and Bhatia would step into a project like this, obviously the documents that have been prepared to date, the information that has been prepared to date would be turned over to this team. Those documents, all those documents, are town documents. The town has or will be paying for those documents. Those will be turned over or would be turned over to Diet and Bhatia. And of course, it would be only appropriate to have a contingency, not knowing exactly the level of completeness of those documents, but those would be turned over and they would develop those documents, as I described earlier, to a completed form for processing through HCD and then ultimately processing through the Planning Commission and Town Council here for certification and adoption. In terms of overall fiscal impact, I've just indicated the budget amount for bringing aboard Diet and Bhatia. To be clear, we've been working on this project since about April of 2021. There has been budget expended. As I stated here in the staff report, the previous consultant has billed through June 30, 2022, approximately $279,000. We have additional invoices. Again, that was through June 30, 2022. We have additional invoices subject to review and approval for payment at this point for July, August, and September, most of September, in the amount of $212,000 approximately that still need to be reviewed for payment. And of course, there would be a closeout in terms of work performed in October. And so there would be an additional closeout amount as well. Those invoices I mentioned for July, August, and September, and any closeout invoice would be reviewed against deliverables, products, deliverables, documents that we would receive to determine the level of payment of those invoices. If the work has been done as described in the invoices, the town staff would authorize, of course, the payment. But those invoices will be reviewed against products that would be deliverables that would be turned over to town staff. Again, our staff position on this is that there's been considerable work done, but we have a lot of work to do and we're a bit behind the curve. And there's a very challenging HCD review process to go through. Our recommendation, our strong recommendation, is to move forward with the team of Diet and Bhatia urban regional planners to complete this project. Tonight, standing by to answer your questions regarding their proposal is one of the co-founders and principals, Rajiv Bhatia. So Rajiv Bhatia is available tonight by way of Zoom to respond to any questions you may have, and he would provide himself a brief introduction. But again, the firm has been around for 40 years. They have, as you can see in the packet, considerable experience in all areas of urban and regional planning. Housing elements, extensive experience in housing elements, extensive experience in general plans, specific plans, environmental review. It is a multidisciplinary team. So they have a lot of capability in-house that they can draw upon along with their deep experience. That concludes my report. And again, our recommendation tonight to the town council is to adopt a resolution of the town council of the town of Fairfax, authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with Diet and Bhatia urban and regional planners to complete the town's 6-cycle housing element and general plan update project. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate your work on this. And I'm going to offer a statement that offers a little bit more background for the community who's on, and then we can open it up for clarifying questions for council before going to public comment. So the 6-cycle housing element is a completely different ballgame in terms of the demanding requirements and scrutiny HCD is offering compared to prior cycles. Southern California is ahead of Northern California in terms of the project life cycle deadlines. And the rate of the housing element approvals for Southern California is dismal at about 20%. And this significant body of work requires housing and planning experts, domain experience we do not have on staff. all jurisdictions in Marin and in the Bay Area use consultants to support and execute the endeavor of the housing element update. As David stated, we are now behind on our housing element project timeline, and these unfortunate circumstances have nothing to do with the commitment or competency of our planning department or any other staff member. We were ahead of the game and now we're behind. We sent a 10-day termination notice yesterday to EMC. They accepted without resistance. I want to thank our staff, particularly Interim Planning Director and Building Services, David Woltering, for his focus and attention in offering us a solution for consideration to get us back on track. The good news or silver lining, as I see it, the comments and challenges that other cities are seeing in terms of the denials and comments are largely due to the lack of demonstrated commitment, programming, et cetera, related to affirmatively further fair housing. And for Fairfax, we have much to feel confident about in this regard. Having just voted to approve the first reading of strengthening our just cause ordinance and rent stabilization ordinance, as well as a stated commitment to inclusionary ordinance by this council. So thank you again. I want to offer the council an opportunity to ask any questions before public comment. I'm seeing no hands.
Yep.
Oh, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for preparing a statement to provide some context. That was helpful. David, I was wondering, well, first and foremost, thanks for the overview. I was wondering the invoices that have yet to be approved, those are obviously going to be measured up against the work products and deliverables, as you stated. I'm curious, given that the sort of overview or the work plan and schedule that's been laid out before us in task one is, prior to kickoff meeting or anything, there would be a review by Diet and Bhatia of the already existing documentation. What's the time frame that we can expect to? Is it the 10 days, or what's the time frame we can expect EMC to provide everything that they have developed to date for us?
That's a good question, and we'll need to sit down with representatives of EMC to work out a schedule to receive those documents. I will say, as you may know, along the way, we've received a number of those documents. So for example, we've had meetings with the Planning Commission regarding ODDS, the Objective Design and Development Standards. So we have maybe not the most current draft of ODDS, but we have a recent draft of ODDS. Same with safety element. We also have the initial study and the notice of preparation. So we will be sitting down with representatives of EMC shortly, going through where they are in terms of additional documentation and information. For example, there would be electronic data and information in terms of mapping information that we would want to receive. But in terms of some of the hard documents, safety element, NOP, like I mentioned, notice of preparation, some of those documents, we have recent copies, but we would want to get the most current and the electronic files to support them. And that's yet to be done in terms of having that meeting with them to determine exactly how much time that would take.
Great. Thank you for that. I have a couple more. In the packet that was presented to us, I think it was mentioned under task 2 that, based on conversations with town staff, the administrative draft housing element is at a 50% level of completion. And I suspect that we will just build on top of that moving forward, that it wouldn't be scrapping that and starting over, but we're building on the framework that's laid out there. I was curious if you can confirm that. And then the second thing is, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering with the draft ODDS and the draft safety element, are there ballpark percentages of where those are at? Are those like 90% or 80%? I'm just curious how far along those other documents are.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. In terms of, say, the administrative draft, I'd prefer to call it a progress draft on the housing element. In terms of the progress draft, I would say, yes, I would say it's at least 50% completed. I've reviewed it. It is a credible framework, and I would say it's at least 50%. So in terms of the proposal submitted by Diet and Bhatia, kind of looking for at least 50%, hopefully, in terms of a completed product, I think it is that. And yes, there would be building upon it. I think in fairness to the consultant teams, teams will look at things a little bit differently in terms of how they approach a particular document and whatnot. I would say that in terms of the housing element, at least 50% is there, and it will be built upon. There may be modifications in terms of the approach and orientation of this team, the Diet and Bhatia team. Regarding the other documents that you mentioned, the draft safety element and also draft odds, those are well along. I hesitate to say, exactly what the percentage, but I'm going to say again that they would be built upon. I think as you looked at the proposal, you may have noticed that there is information that's coming out in terms of fire safety, et cetera, in terms of work that other agencies are doing related to the safety element, focusing on that for a moment, that Diet and Bhatia has indicated in its proposal that as that information comes out, it would blend it in to the safety element. So, I think that both of those documents are probably 75% along, but in terms of the safety element, I know that for sure there's additional information coming out from other agencies that needs to be blended in as indicated in the proposal from Diet and Bhatia. So the thresholds that they've mentioned in their proposal of 50% or better, I think are met in the three cases that I cited: safety, odds, and the working draft housing element. But again, there's some new information coming out in terms of past laws and other agency work, and also the approach of Diet and Bhatia, which would, modify those documents in ways. But
thank you.
Okay,
that was super helpful. And I appreciate even the ballpark 75%. It just helps me get a sense of how far along we are with all these different documents we're juggling. I was curious, we just did the notice of preparation for the CEQA process. And I'm wondering, for folks who participated in that initial webinar related to that and submitted comments related to scoping, stuff like that, where does that all stand? Are we still accepting comments in this period, even as we're thinking about shifting gears? Or
sure, be happy to respond to that. So with the notice of preparation scoping period, it was a 30-day period, which has expired. So we did receive a number of comments during that period. Those comments, the notice of preparation document itself, and also the initial study are base documents that again would be turned over to Diet and Bhatia. Diet and Bhatia will be doing its own for the town. Again, this work is for the town. It's its own focused environmental impact report based on its assessment of the initial study. That information that was received, people came to our scoping meeting by way of Zoom and provided comments. Those comments and the written comments received will be passed on to Diet and Bhatia. I would assume, though, that information will be passed on, but I could well imagine that with a new consultant and starting up, we just began, that will be base information that will be used, but I could imagine that we would repeat the notice of preparation and the scoping so that citizens would have an opportunity to, again, provide comments. That's not to say that those prior comments wouldn't be received, turned over, and considered. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, Rajiv Bhatia is available as you may have any questions. He's standing by on Zoom.
Great, thank you. And I just had one final question, which is related to this. Obviously, some of those pieces speak to the timeline and are our scheduling of all of these projects. The other piece you mentioned was communication and getting things out on our website is a challenge. And I'm wondering, we've invited members of the public and did all sorts of postcarding and bookmarks, and I don't know, probably did like koozies and all sorts of things to get people to go to Fairfax Speaks. And I'm wondering, were we managing Fairfax Speaks, or was our consultant, and do we have the capacity, or does Diet and Bhatia have the capacity to continue to use that as the site we're funneling people to for new information?
So Fairfax Speaks was being managed by the prior consultant. So that's something I'll have to take a look at. As you saw in the proposal, Diet and Bhatia has committed to providing information on a periodic basis. It's spelled out in the proposal, which would be put up on the town's website. I think that one thing that I've observed is that sometimes there has been kind of a disconnect between the town's website and Fairfax Speaks. And that's, you know, something we need to address. We need to address to make sure that our citizens, our community members have a clear understanding of where the information is and that it's current and accurate. And so that's something that I would certainly work with Diet and Bhatia on. I can't answer, I'm not specifically answering your question, though. I hope you realize that. I apologize. In terms of Fairfax Speaks, I'll need to sort that out. But no question, in terms of the proposal, regular information would be provided to the town, would go up on the town's website. I think we need to sort out how to make sure that people know exactly where to go and that it's up to date and accurate. And we will do that.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you so much, David.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Mayor. You're on mute.
Go ahead, Councilmember Goddard.
Thank you. Yeah, it really actually piggybacking off of what Vice Mayor was asking. I do believe that I read in the proposal that there would be, you know, a direct and pretty seamless path between the Fairfax Speaks forum in terms of what we've already collected there, information, participation, interaction from the public in developing the opportunity sites. And I just want to make sure in asking, and maybe this is for is it Mr. Bhatia?
It's Rajiv Bhatia.
Yes,
Mr.
that
Bhatia.
Just to confirm that, you know, as an extraordinary amount of public outreach and participation has been a part of this since back in 2021 between meetings with the Affordable Housing Committee, meetings with the ResJ, meeting with multiples, obviously with Town Council. I really should have this in front of me. And most recently, of course, working with the Planning Commission on the odds, which is probably the most crucial thing to us maintaining as much local control as we can. I'm just wanting to confirm that all of that will be accessible to you and will be used as we move forward. So we're not, you know, talking about resources that were wasted and that, you know, won't be moved forward through the process.
Councilmember Goddard, if I could start, maybe Rajiv Bhatia could add to my comments, but our intent would absolutely be to retrieve, bring forward all of that information and not lose it, but bring it forward in terms of the website and really try to improve on the headlining and titles and accessibility so that in terms of a glossary, a table of contents, if you will, that people better understand what is available and where and how to access it. So we would certainly want to work with Rajiv Bhatia and his team, look at Fairfax Speaks, look at our own town website, and try to bring all the information together and really create, I'll say, a glossary or index so that it's easier for people to understand what's there and to get to it. And if Mr. Bhatia is available, he could respond as well.
Thank you, David. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Town Council. Now, that is one question that I'm not 100% sure on how to respond, David. Certainly in terms of the material itself, we'll be building on the good work with outreach that has previously been done. We will not be, renewing any participation efforts. So we will definitely review the material and the outreach efforts that have been done. I am not sure, we would need to speak to staff if that website will actually be maintained as we do the remaining portion of the update process. So either as an active site or as a repository of information for citizens to look at. That is something we'll need to work on with David, but definitely, if that website can be made accessible to us, if we can be given the keys to it or the password or whatever, we are happy to maintain that and post information on that. But we will definitely provide materials to David and his staff for keeping the website up to date pretty frequently as new material is developed.
Thank you, Rajiv, on that. And I just want to confirm and assure council members that the information that's on Fairfax Speaks, regardless, will be gathered, as I mentioned. The information that the prior consultant team has is the town's information. So that information will be brought forward either using that site or the town site, but we'll work that out. But the information will not be lost. And hopefully the objective would be to better index that information.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that answers the primary question I had, which was with regard to, as Mr. Bhatia said, just being able to access the website from the back end, essentially, and be able to continue the use of that website without needing to rebuild it. But I understand with the information that it will be carried forward and actually improved. But that was my only question, and I've heard it answered as well as we can at this point. Thank you.
Any other questions before I open public comment? Okay, let's open public comment now, please. We'll start with those in the room.
Okay. Anyone wanting to make a public comment can come up here to the wall, get in line. Okay, you're first. Go ahead. You can come up to the podium and you push the button on the microphone to turn it on. On the base there. Yeah. And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Holly Beatty, and I'm a local business owner. I own Medicine, which for 5 years has spent its time at School Street Plaza, which is a part of the housing element. I also am currently a candidate for the town council. I really loved the way this meeting began with an honoring and a tribute to the Miwok, the ancestral people of this land. It would be so refreshing if conversations of planning and building actually were taking into consideration the ancestors of this land. It's very clear that trying to stack concrete building in 5 stories on land that is butting up right against this ancestral creek near the Shell Mountain where the trades happen is definitely not including anything to do with this ancestral land. And so I feel that I need to point out to this council that you're in great conflict with your own values and your actions tonight. Also, I want to share with you how surprised I am that this special meeting is talking about spending now more than $1 million to implement this atrocious number of high-rise concrete buildings, which we have seen in other towns have actually not ended up serving homeless or low-income people, but rather something very different indeed. But what I'm surprised by is that this meeting is actually not being called as a response to Mark Levine's recent Assembly Bill 1445, where the state just looked at and asked and is asking local governments to look at how these kinds of housing elements that are being mandated and coerced into local jurisdictions right now are actually impacting fire safety and more. So I would like to hear more about that and how you can address the issues with regard to the new AB 1445. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Before the next speaker speaks, pardon me, Michelle, I can't see the timer, so you'll need to offer the speaker 10 seconds.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pamela Meggs, 310 Cypress. Just as a quick note, when I'm speaking, if I could ask the mayor not to shake her head no, please, thank you, which you just did to Holly. I have some process questions. I'm also elected on the sanitary board, and my process questions are about comparatives on what you looked up to see on this consultant. Is it comparative to other consultant fees? And also looking at, is this a bidding issue, or does the town just accept this bid that you get from whoever you decide to pick from, or do you look at other bidding options? And then I was really surprised on how much more money the first person was almost 100%, as we call change order. And I was just shocked to see that was almost double the amount from the original. So I have some concerns, and I'm trying to trust the process, but we're looking at now $621,000, and I'm concerned that that could jump up as well. And I'm wondering, who does the supervision on these funds as it goes along? Is it staff? Is it the mayor? Who is it? And then last, you know, this is a small town. That's a lot of money. I mean, I'm talking from me as a citizen, not from my elected position, but we need so much more here done. And I'm wondering, are you doing beyond the requirements? Are you doing bare bones, or are you adding on or putting more into what is actually needed? And let's see, I got to look at my notes here. So last, oh boy, I get some understanding of this is sort of starting over.
10 seconds, sorry.
And I'm wondering, are we having to pay more fees on top of other fees? So anyway, I'm looking out for the people and the public here on fees, and I really want a senior center and more programs for the kids, and the streets are so bad. Thank
you. Good afternoon, Rick Hamer. I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee. Speaking of disclosures, I really feel that we are entitled to full disclosure as to the relationships between the parties here. I think that Diet and Batia do nice work. I looked at the package. They seem to be a reputable firm, but I'm dazed on the path that we took to get here. When we seem to have a close relationship since Jim Moore went to work after Fairfax to Sausalito. When Garrett Toy departed and Adam Pulitzer took over the place, he was from Sausalito, as was our interim Director of Public Works, Jonathan Goldman. Ralph Anderson came on board. Heather Abrams came aboard, previously from Tamalpais. Bill Benberto departed, and now we're in some type of jam, apparently. Again, I'm just going to fast forward because of time here. our interim director, David Woltering, who had previously worked with San Bruno and Ross, and apparently Diet and Baeta has also done the housing element for both Ross and currently hired by Ross for their housing element, and also for San Bruno. And I really do think that our appointed officials should take a break and announce to the public what type of relationships they have with this firm that they're hiring without a bidding process.
10 seconds. Thank you.
Good evening. Frank Ager, Meadoway, speaking for Save Fairfax this evening. This meeting tonight is shocking. It's not on TV. You gave 24-hour notice for folks to read, if they could even find it, a 48-page staff report. 24-hour notice to restart its California Environmental Quality Act process for our housing element for 588 units now, and the safety element. It looks like Fairfax wasted $500,000 already and is trying to slip this under the radar now, covering up a mistake and spending another $622,000 to restart the process. The scoping period for CEQA has closed, is flat out closed. Will the work of EMC or Diet Baeta be the basis for the next EIR? EMC was paid close to $500,000 so far. From the 48-page staff report tonight, Fairfax is spending close to $1.2 million for this whole process. And you haven't finished the EIR, you haven't got into the EIR yet, I don't think. Fairfax has changed its meeting days. It was on a Wednesday, then it's on a Tuesday, then it's on a Thursday. You wonder why there's hardly anyone here. No one's watching it on TV because it's not on TV. It's impossible for Fairfax residents to read a 48 staff report and attend this meeting. When did you fire EMC? Obviously, it had to have been fired. The MO of Fairfax Town Attorney is clear. There is too much going on behind closed doors, clearly Brown Act violations. It's time for either the grand jury to investigate Fairfax or the state auditor to come in and audit Fairfax's books. When I served on the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board, I found all kinds of errors and all kinds of double posting and mistakes. It was really serious. And the board was kind of just at a loss trying to deal with it. I brought in the state auditor. The state auditor found $300,000 in misspent funds. I won't explain exactly how it happened, but the former director ended up in jail.
I'm afraid your time is run out.
I'm speaking for Save Fairfax. How many minutes did I get?
I put 2. I wasn't told to do more. Do you want 2 more?
I only get 2 minutes? Well, that's okay.
Mayor,
this is typical of Fairfax.
Oh.
This is one of the most dishonest town councils I've seen in a long time. If
Frank, you can have your 4 minutes. Go ahead.
If you can't control what's going on in this town, then you ought to resign and let someone else come in and take over your duties. Thank you very much.
Mark Bell, Fairfax. According to the California Appellate Court rules, a 3-minute limit is a reasonable restriction. To cut to 2 minutes may be reasonable, but only if the agenda is long and there are a vast amount of people who want to speak. Therefore, please give me 3 minutes. A short history of consultants. The one that you don't hire, who you really need in this town, is a forensic accountant, or as Frank said, a state auditor. We had a garbage consultant for $60,000, and what did he say? Pay Marin Sanitary and don't put the contract out to bid? Or was that just because of campaign contributions? You had a ResJ consultant, $65,000, incompetent, unqualified. Cascade Striping, totally illegal, $85,000. And so now here we are with EMC gone. It was obvious from the beginning that something was wrong with these people. And then there were so many red flags that the town council couldn't even see, like this guy saying that St. Rita's was totally on board for having the housing on their land. And then on open time, we had a representative from the San Francisco Archdiocese call in and say, we never talked to this guy and we have no idea and no inclination to ever put housing on our land. That's not a red flag, and it continued. Save Fairfax? What a joke. Oh, it's going to be great. You can go on there and you can move these sliders. It was like a kindergarten teacher. This is a serious thing that's going on, and this is what we get. I mean, is this delusions or outright lying? Also, the private conversations on how they were going to figure out how to nullify the Ridge Ordinance. This happened. I heard it. I overheard it.
Time.
We need full reimbursement. I hope these.
I think we're ready for the next speaker. Michelle, we can't hear. Could you ask CMCM to unmute, please?
Meetings all over the county.
Can you hear us
they
now?
Can't cover every meeting on their TV station.
Okay.
2 stations.
Solved.
So I didn't.
Thank you. Strange.
Okay.
Let us proceed.
Okay. So we're going to start again. So I didn't hear you, Renee. You said it's being recorded. It's on TV. I didn't hear that.
CMCM is here, and and we stream directly through our website.
Through
you
channel
can click on the link.
or whatever.
No, right on our website. You click live
so
meeting.
People know that.
They should, but we'll do a better job making sure people
Well, see,
know
that wasn't even on my thoughts here. That was one of my problems. Like, so I usually don't come in, but now we have open and I do have to get home. But I usually am on home watching this and call in. So that's unfortunate if it's not being seen or.
I'm sorry, could you please state your name?
Oh, sure, Kathy. So I wrote something up very quickly. I don't even know what it says. To draw up the first round of the town's 6-cycle housing element general plan, the town paid EMC, I'm just reiterating what everybody have said, but $491,000, which by the way is not their final bill, plus an extra to our attorney, $178,000. This is over and above her salary. I don't even know what that is. And this comes up to be about $669,000. Lo and behold, I don't know who was watching over EMC. I think it's one of our questions. Was it the town attorney? Was it their attorneys? Was it them? Who's watching over all this to spend this amount of money? It's a year and a half. They maybe got 40% done, maybe. I'm not sure what really got done by EMC. And now we have to hire a new consultant, which is like $660,000, let's just say. Plus, that's not the final. It's going to probably go up to another million. So we're already up at 1.29 million, 1,290,000. That's including the new guy that's coming on, but that's not the final bill. And I'm just concerned that nothing was done. Well, not nothing was done, but things were done for a year and a half, but nothing was final or getting to the final. And we're just finding this out. It's very disturbing that we're spending this money from a small town where, like someone else said, we could be using this money other places. I'm not sure what else. It's really saddened. And not a lot of people know about this. I mean, not a lot of people know what's going on, and it's all it's not under the covers, but if you're not listening, you're not getting it and you're not hearing it. So that's it. I'm just really sad how this is going down, and I'm not sure who's watching over anybody. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Oh, okay.
It's been a long time since I've been here. All right, Mallory Guttheim, Willow, Fairfax. All right, number one, I just found out because I was walking my dog and Mark came out and Rick, somebody came out and said there's a meeting. And, we've done this before, you guys. And to want to keep this as private as possible by saying we'll just put it on late at night or the day before, and so nobody shows up, a very few people show up. That's not okay. All right, you need to inform us with enough time so we can get here. Number two, people that you're spending you're always complaining we don't have money to do anything. And we're paying, what, $1.2 million? We could have used that for lawyers to fight for Fairfax instead of all this bullshit that we're using it for that makes no sense. Okay? So let's fight for Fairfax the way we used to do it before you guys got on board. Okay? And sit here and make a lot of people in Fairfax happy without spending money for no good reason. Thanks.
Richard Applebaum, 61 Woodland. I've been getting a lot of flack from a lot of my neighbors that I've gone soft and I've become a toothless tiger. So I'm not going to come up here and make accusations about things that I don't know all the details of, but I'm going to make a recommendation. And I don't know if there's just a disconnect, that if the process that we have for the way discourse happens between the council and the citizens doesn't allow for the kind of dialogue or back and forth or disclosures about certain information that things become distorted. I've been saying things like, I don't believe the council doesn't have our best interests at heart and that there's anything nefarious going on, but clearly tonight, folks feel that that may not be true. And so my recommendation to you all is find some format. If it can't happen this way because of the legalities of how council meetings have to run, I understand there's an agenda item you're going to vote on yes or no to take on a new consultant. That's actually the agenda item that's at hand. But clearly people want to understand what's gone on and they want to understand what the process is and how is an entity vetted and who's actually responsible for managing them and where are the deadlines and where are the milestones and how could we show up a year and a half later and suddenly discover that we're behind or the work that we thought we were going to get, we didn't get or whatever. And so my recommendation is find a way to communicate that. If you haven't all dropped the ball, if it's not nefarious, if we got a bad break or the scope of what this is much bigger than anything we've seen in any other cycle and there's parameters to this and complexities, help everyone understand what's happening so that they don't feel bad about it. We don't continue to, I would like us to not be contentious. I would like things to not be acrimonious. I would like to not be accusing the town officials of dropping the ball or having agendas or whatever it is. And it's hard sometimes. And in a town where money is tight, our tax base is limited.
10 seconds.
I'm accusing you all of nothing. I'm complaining about nothing. I'm asking you all to find a way to communicate better and more clearly so that folks can understand things better. Maybe some things will make some sense. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, there's no one else in the room for public comment, but we might want to go to Zoom.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Can we open the Zoom? If you're ready to speak, please raise your hand. Folks attending on Zoom.
Yes, and I see 2 hands raised right now. The first is Alice McCracken, followed by Deborah Benson. And Allison, you are unmuted now.
Good evening, I'm Allison McCracken. I work in Fairfax. I represent the Marin Town and Country Club for sale. I'd really like to see some transparency on who initiated letting the former consultant go, Andy Flower and his team, and why specifically, not just a bad website or timing, and then who initiated bringing in the new group. It feels to me, given the amount of time I've spent in Fairfax and watching this housing element come to, in different stages, that there's been an incredible amount of time wasted and money wasted for something that does not need to be this difficult. And it seems like a lot of effort has gone into trying to avoid what is a very obvious solution for the town. And I feel very bad for the town due to the mismanagement of this entire process. It should not cost this much to get the housing element completed. I've worked directly with the HCD before in much larger cities, and it's really unfortunate to see the town at this place. So I think some more transparency as to why the consultant was let go and to who brought in the new consultant would be very helpful in understanding, who's really responsible for where we are today and why we're not moving forward in a more seamless way. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Deborah Benson, and you're unmuted now. There you go.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, council members, for hearing me. Deborah Benson, Cascade Drive, Fairfax. I would like to just make a couple of comments first about process here in these meetings. I think it's curious that the remarks that Mark Bell was making, which were probably not welcomed by the council, were cut off. After just about at 2 minutes, his sound went off. And this is a public meeting. Even if he was over, I have the right to hear what he was saying. And I would like a transcript of his remarks. I'll ask for it at town hall. Stephanie, Mayor Hellman, the head shaking business and the smiling as if someone is ridiculous is inappropriate. And I would like that to stop. Also, in the Zoom meetings, I see council members with their heads down, obviously texting. This is again a public meeting, and any any communication should be public communications. They shouldn't be private and texting. This latest color of our council and our management staff does seem to reek somewhat of cronyism since the interim town manager came in. We're suddenly expanding our staff by many people. I would like to know who knows who as well, you know, as Rick Hamer said. I'd like to know who hired who knows who. And I'd like to know how it got so far that this money was being spent and this project was being so mismanaged that the consultants have to be fired. I mean, who's really looking out for Fairfax? It really feels like you all have your personal, not all of you, but some of you have your personal agendas that you're following, and you're not really looking out for the people who elected you. So I'd like you to get in there, dig in there deeper, and take more control, to pay more attention and take more control about of staff and what's going on here. So thank you for hearing me.
Thanks. I see no further speakers on Zoom. If you want to close the public comment.
Terrific. I am closing public comment, bringing it back. Go ahead, Councilmember Kohler.
I just want to provide some clarification as to the Community Media Center, Marin, and how our meetings are viewed. I'm a board member of the Media Center, and the Media Center has Channel 27 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T, and they're juggling a number of government meetings. At times, they use Channel 30, which is the educational channel, to show a government meeting as well. Our meetings will not always be shown on your television set, but they can always be watched on the computer. CMCM has to juggle many government meetings, so you can't always count on watching ours on TV, which for some people is the most convenient way. So just to throw that out there, I've had several people texting me, asking me questions about whether or not something's on TV, and I can't answer that. So hopefully this will help.
Anything else? Okay.
You're asking follow-up from all
I
of
was
us?
asking if Barbara was done. Did you want to speak, Vice Mayor?
Councilmember Kohler, I saw your hand go up again. Do you have anything else? Sorry, I don't.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor. I was wondering if it's time to make a motion, or are there deliberative comments? Because I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, I have a couple of other comments.
Yeah, and I have some more as well, just based on public comment.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering, there were some questions that came up. The number 588, obviously we mentioned orally 490 is the RHNA number. In the documents, 490 plus a buffer. It's been talked about in the past what the purpose of the buffer is, but are we able to clarify that there's, you know, different numbers out there, but I just think it'd be good to clarify at this stage.
Vice Mayor, I'd be happy to do that. And the assigned RHNA number for the town of Fairfax for the 6th cycle is 490 new units across the full range of affordability levels, and they're broken down by affordability. Oftentimes, in terms of actual development, the actual yield isn't what one would anticipate. So there's a buffer. So that buffer provides a margin so that a local community is better assured that it will hit that assignment of 490. So we've been working with 490 as the base and a 20% buffer And that buffer, the intent of the buffer is to better assure that as the community gets to the end of the cycle, that indeed it hits the minimum of 490 units. That's the objective. Thank you.
Got it. So it's because this is a planning exercise, we're trying to make sure across the sites that we're able to demonstrate that we can plan for that number. That number could feasibly be built across a number of sites if things change over time or within the 6th cycle, essentially. Is that
correct?
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. So in order to meet that mandate from the state, we hired EMC. Folks still have questions clearly about how that happened. Am I correct in understanding we did do a bidding process and EMC responded to that public bidding process?
They did, and they were the only ones.
Okay, great. And the management of the work that EMC was doing, and I think there were some questions about, I think someone mentioned a number that was like 491. And in our fiscal impact in our staff report here, there's a 279 that's been paid through June 30th and 212 that has been received but not yet been approved for payment. Add those together, you get the number that folks are talking about. So we've approved up to a certain amount and for staff to manage the project, right? So staff are overseeing the invoices, and that 491 has not been, am I right in understanding that's not been fully paid, but it's actually only a portion of that has been approved thus far?
Vice Mayor, I'd be happy to respond. So in terms of under fiscal impact in your staff report, the 279, 162, 62, those are invoices received from EMC and paid by the town of Fairfax through June 30th, 2022. The other number that's in your staff report, the 212, 198, is, I'm going to say, a very close estimate of invoices that we've received in July, August, and in September that we're holding for review and authorization for payment until we are able to review the description and detail in those invoices to make sure that the deliverables, the products and work performed, coincides and supports the invoicing. And to be clear and transparent, that the September invoice was not full. We were told that a couple of sub-consultants hadn't submitted their invoices into that September invoice. So as I said before, and as described here, transparently under fiscal impact, in terms of closeout, there will be additional invoices or final invoice, one or the other, which we would review against deliverables to assure that we have the products and deliverables per the scope of work that support payment. And if they don't coincide, we would sit down and review that with EMC representatives in terms of the appropriate payment to make.
Can I interject? Because I think
Sure.
that's given me what I was asking for. But so just to confirm very simply for what I was interested in specifically, we haven't actually paid 491,000.
You're right, correct. What we've paid is the 279, 162, 62.
Excellent. That's perfect. Thank you very much for that, David. I appreciate that. That helps with that. The other question, someone mentioned something about an audit, but Town Manager Abrams, we did just have an audit, didn't we? And it came back clean. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Every year we have a financial audit, and that was recently presented to the council.
Excellent. And I was curious, my final thing, is someone brought up a new law by Assemblymember Levine, I believe, AB 1445. And I was just curious, how does something like that, I think even at our last meeting on Tuesday, Mayor Hellman mentioned like 40 new housing laws were passed or were signed by the governor. How do those laws work their way into the process while we're still in the middle the process? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, excellent question. And in those cases where we have laws in place that the consultant team has anticipated in their proposal, they will be addressed in the proposal. They are addressed in the proposal, and they'll be addressed in the work performed, to be clear. There's an example of that in the Diet and Bhatia proposal, where in terms of, and I stated this before in the presentation, there is some new information in terms of public safety, specifically in the area of fire safety. Information is coming out in terms of evacuation routes, et cetera. That information, because it will be, we presume it will be, to clarify, we presume it will be timely to incorporate into the document. Diet and Bhatia has indicated in their proposal they would do that. So where a law is passed and it's been anticipated in terms of the proposal and scope of work, it would be addressed. And if not, it would not be addressed. It would need to come later in terms of an amendment or a follow-up.
Got it. I see.
If I may, my understanding of Levine's legislation, and thankfully it went through, is that it will inform the RHNA numbers as we go forward. It will not, in my understanding, give us a legal ground to that will affect or change the RHNA that's already been allocated and that we are required to plan for. It did say that specifically, but I would be very happy to do a little bit more research there. And I'm sure that Diet and Bhatia and David would too, because if there's any opportunity for more protection from fire in terms of where and what we're required to do, it would be in all of our best interest, believe me. So if it's possible, and speaking to what you spoke to, we will find out.
Yeah, I'm really glad this is being brought up. My understanding is that that Levine bill would apply to the 7th cycle. So if any part of it can be or applied this cycle, Janet, are you able to comment on that bill? Do you know?
No, we're preparing analysis of the over 40 new bills that were signed by the governor in September. So that information will be coming out.
I just have one more question, which I think a couple of people brought up, and I don't really know how it works. And maybe Janet, it's a question for you, but after we do a public bidding process, and if we're switching to a new group at some point in the process, why do we, or why wouldn't we do another bid, or how does that typically work?
Well, we're not required to do so. I mean, we do so whenever, we can, but for a consultant, for a planning consultant like this, we're not required to do so. It's not like a public works project where you actually, the use of the word bid and bidding is in public works projects. Public contracts code projects, that's not what this is. And so we did do one initially in, I don't know if it was the end of 20 or beginning of 21, but we had one response, and that was EMC. And if obviously all cities and everybody is doing their housing element right now, so the limited number of consultants are pretty well booked and have already set their schedules. And so I think we were lucky to find that Diet and Bhatia has availability.
Great. And again, I think someone mentioned in the public that something about restarting the housing element process, but I think it was clear from the first go around of questions that they're building off of what's already been done. So yeah, I think that answers everything that I had, but I really appreciate all the public comments, because I think it's good if these questions are out here that we're like fleshing them out and getting things out public and answering those questions, because it is confusing, I think, for everybody, us on the council included, how to move through a housing element process. So thank you.
May I make some comments, Mayor?
Yeah, but before you do that, I just want to expand on this transparency piece and the bidding item. I think we I think most of us had this question ourselves, and I understood that we're already behind, right? And there is some urgency here because we're at risk in a number of ways if we don't meet the timelines. And going out to bid, which is definitely a best practice that we try to adhere to, would take like 90 days. That's what I understood, and we just don't have that 90 days.
It's 90 days, is that right?
Pardon me?
Yeah, I just was confirming with staff. That's typically 90 days for a process like that.
I'd be happy to respond to that. Yes, I would say that in terms of a formal request for proposals, developing the RFP, putting it out for 30 days, receiving proposals back in, evaluating, making a recommendation to council, selecting, preparing the contract, et cetera. Yes, that RFP process, not a bid process. This is a professional services agreement. The RFP process, given what I just described, commonly would be at least 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to confirm
that's
that.
all good. And just to expand on, next steps and transparency around invoices paid, the pending invoices with EMC, and that, vetting process, if you will, as far as matching the current work product that has been provided with the actual invoices that have yet to be paid. What I've seen is a draft product that I think we said was 50-60% complete. It's about 4 inches thick. So that is going to take some time to do, but I'd like to hear from staff as far as, as we progress with that and we have more definitive, obviously you're going to be engaging with EMC on that, but as we learn more, what's a good mechanism to be sharing back? Is that through the subcommittee and their monthly reports, or I'm open to how to do that, but any recommendation as we learn more and come to terms with what we will decidedly pay of that $212,000?
Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to respond to that. I think as I indicated earlier during the presentation, our first step based on the notice of termination would be to gather all of the documentation from the previous consultant and then review it, evaluate it against the invoices. We have asked that the consultant provide a description, a written description of the work performed to append to the invoices so that we have an understanding of the hours and work performed. So I would expect that myself and probably the town attorney and others perhaps, but at least the two of us would review that information, the information received against the invoices, and determine whether or not the invoicing supports the work performed. If not, and the town attorney may want to comment on this, but I would think the next step would be to sit down with appropriate representatives of the previous consultant firm and review our findings and discuss a modification to the invoices in terms of the work performed and the invoicing. If on the other hand, if we find that the work performed matches the invoice amounts, I would presume that those invoices would be paid. If not, there would be a discussion, negotiation, and I would expect, and this is probably more for the town attorney to respond to at that point of reporting out. But I think there needs to be gathering information, reviewing it against invoicing, determining was the work done? If not, what was the estimated level of work? Discuss that with EMC representatives, and then come to some negotiated agreement in terms of what should be paid, and then report out. Town attorney?
Yes, all monies paid to consultants are public record. And so that will become public record. Right now, the only thing we have as public records are the invoices received and the ones that have been paid. And the others are considered to be in draft form, and we're subject to review and perhaps even negotiation. So those aren't, we don't know a final number on those yet. But when we do, it will be public record.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Goddard.
Okay, thank you. I have a few things to say, but I just wanted to express something before I make my official comments, and that is that there were a lot of speakers here tonight, and I wish that I could speak to them right now and to all of you. And it's disheartening to me that half the folks who came in very angry, and rightly so, left. And so what happens when we're grappling with things and staff is explaining things and we're all learning together, if people leave and then people come back and tend to be even more angry and more confused. And I understand why, but I just needed to express that before I speak. And then also before I make a few comments, David, I wondered, there's an assertion out there, and it's on social media, and it's been spoken to tonight, that we are planning to build 5-story buildings. And I just wondered, as an experienced planner, as someone who's been through many of these processes, dealing with communities who are really understandably protective and worried about what happens when you think about 5-story buildings in your small town, how can we speak to that, to the public, in a way that doesn't just frighten people to death? Because it isn't what we're planning to do.
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. I hear those comments and I'm a bit puzzled by them, because that certainly isn't the intent. And in fact, as the Planning Commission has been working with the prior consultant team on the odds, we've been looking at a variety of design and development standard issues. And really, in terms of affordability, in terms of multifamily and affordability, the idea has been more in terms of looking at perhaps smaller units, even reduced parking standards, and this idea of high rise that really isn't what has been discussed. What's been discussed is more looking at, I'll say, the urban fabric of the town of Fairfax and blending in appropriate development given the urban fabric here. So I'm a bit puzzled by that, because that certainly hasn't been a part of the discussion or the intent. And I think as we would move forward with this project and complete the odds and look at opportunities to provide in this community the full range of housing, including all economic segments, we're not looking at high-rise development. That's not really what this community is looking at. It's looking at housing that fits with the fabric, the urban fabric of this community and what makes it special. So maybe that's something in terms of the website, in terms of our communication I mentioned in our presentation tonight, that I think we need to do a better job in terms of communicating with our community members, in terms of website and the information we put up. And so it would certainly be my intent to work with our staff and our consultant team to try to make sure that at public meetings and on the website, we communicate the vision more clearly.
Okay, great. And I also think it would help if it's possible in working, if we choose to go with the new consultant, that we start to really talk to the public about the odds, which, as I understand, the odds are, those are our protections. Those are our local protections from things that I would say, and I think if I can look at this council, I can say that we collectively want to protect. Those protections are in the odds, from what I understand, and it is complicated. So we need to really be clear in our communications about what those odds are, so that people can come and speak directly to what they are, what they think is most effective and useful in our planning process, and what we how we need to work with the odds. And the Planning Commission has been doing this. How many meetings have they met? Have they worked on odds?
You know, more recently they've had 2 meetings, but they've had several in the past. But they've had, you know, 2 really, I think, very productive meetings recently in the last six weeks to 2 months. But there's been work on odds in the past, well before I came here. But recently, I would say that we had 2, I think, very productive meetings on odds. Yeah.
Terrific. And then if I can just take a few minutes to make a few comments, I wanted one to please speak to Mr. Ager and assert my deep faith that this council is not a dishonest council. And I'm happy to talk with you offline about that, but I've never known a council that's worked harder to be honest. And just a minute, sir. I have an opportunity to speak. We listened very carefully to everybody's comments. And the other, if I may, we just passed some of the most stringent green building reach code policies that there are in certainly the county and what I've heard around the state, certainly Bay Area. And so when we talk about putting concrete monstrosities on the ground, being in conflict with the land acknowledgement that really speaks to our true values, I just want to make sure that the community understands that we are doing everything in our power. This is one of the greenest councils you've had to make sure that we do things right by the environment and by the Indigenous folks who were and are here before us. So we may disagree, but and again, I'm happy to talk offline. I wanted to just express that to everyone. And then I wanted to say to everyone, I'm shocked by the cost of consultants for a housing element process in a small town with a small budget that we have to spend $1 million or more. This doesn't have to do with our shift from one consultant to the other. This is the cost. To Heather Abrams' credit, when she became our town manager, she negotiated with EMC to keep that cost at a more reasonable level. They had asked for 1.1. We got them lower than where they were taking us. We've had the money and the budget for this top of mind through this process, and the oversight has been excellent. Michael Vivrette is our finance director, and I think you will see if you look through budgets this year and in the past that his budgets are impeccable. And as Chance asked about the audit, we have passed with flying colors. Michael Vivrette is available to walk anyone through the budget at any time, and he's a great guy. But nonetheless, I am shocked. And I think there are ways that we need to streamline how it is this county pays for consultants. I don't believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there are any cities, and I don't want to misspeak, that are paying less than around $1 million for these consultants. And to me, that's outrageous. We're all generally small, except Santa Fe and Novato in this county. And I think there are ways to work together as we move forward in subsequent housing element processes and other things to share consultants in a way that's appropriate, and then to carve out the parts that are just us, just Fairfax. So I understand you all, and I understand you walking in or looking at that staff report and going, what? And I believe we all are too, but it is what it costs, and it is necessary for us to get to the finish line on this housing element. I think Mallory asked, are you, I don't know, maybe it was Pam, sorry. Are you doing this like above and beyond, or are you just doing bare bones? How are you doing this? And I would say that we are doing exactly what it is that's been required of us. I think where we differ in the work compared to some of the other municipalities is we have put far more time into the public outreach, and especially around affirmatively furthering fair housing, tenants workshops, scoping sessions, looking in a way, the amount of time that we've spent has been primarily to bring people to the table. EMC worked with the Good Earth to try and bring their employees to the table. It's taken coordination and time. And if we look at what we've got, it's an unfortunate situation, not because of something that we or staff did purposely. You know, you can believe me if you want, but I can tell you that, and I am an honest person. Darn it, I forgot my last thing. Somebody else speak and I'll remember, I'm sure. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we can come back to you because I have one other suggestion or
okay.
comment.
And before I come back, before I do that, I really want to thank everyone. It's sometimes hard to hear these things, but the fact that everyone's paying attention and cares this much and understands that we have a job to do and joins to do it with us, the better it's going to come out. So I'm sorry to sound very Pollyanna. I see people shaking their heads, but I believe that this community can do this and do it right.
Okay. Well, we have yet to speak with Mr. Bhatia, and I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions related to this current 6th cycle. In the back of the report that we have, there's many jurisdictions listed that you've supported. But I'm very interested in your experience or exposure, you know, to HCD with regard to the 6th cycle. So could you share, like I see Oakland and Fairfield, it looks like are supposed 6th cycle. Could you share, are these approved yet? What the status of those and any others that are 6th cycle is really what I'm interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those are indeed 6th cycle examples. So Oakland was submitted to HCD about 100 days ago, and we have the HCD comments on that. Fairfield was submitted. These are Bay Area cities. So Fairfield was submitted to HCD a little while ago, and I believe Ross is being submitted to HCD next week. So these are the Bay Area cities. We are also working in the Bay Area on San Pablo, and that they had a late start. In Southern California, we did Moreno Valley. That is one of the ones certified by HCD, one of the few ones that was certified recently. Carson, I believe, I'm hoping will be certified.
Moreno Valley, how much back and forth was required? Like how many rounds?
A lot. I mean, there were several rounds, and it really, as some speakers have said, it is all about affirmatively furthering fair housing. I mean, that was the big issue. I mean, and in Carson, I'm hoping it'll be, we are going to get certification like tomorrow or day after tomorrow, like just under the, and again, in the case of Carson, it was not the housing sites. They told us very plainly, you have adequate sites. We are looking for adequately furthering fair housing. So those two, you know, should be approved very soon. So I mean, I think we're doing well. Oakland had a late start. Oakland, we really got going only in like November or December, and we did turn in like literally like, you know, almost 4 months ago to HCD. So that has produced in a pretty rapid time period. And in previous cycles, we have done, you know, work in other communities. I'm just trying to think, is there any other Bay Area city? No, we're only doing like 6 Bay Area cities in this round, in the 6th cycle. You know, we do general plans as well. So we don't just do housing elements, and we're doing other general plans. So we're doing Napa general plan that's should be adopted next week, for example, and we're doing other cities of, you know, general plans. Oakland is a full general plan we're doing, including the housing element. Fairfield as well is a complete general plan.
Okay, so
yeah.
Could you add color if there is any to like the lessons learned from Southern California and how you are consulting with your clients in Northern California, so we don't have, I mean, obviously none of us wants multiple rounds. So I see that as value you're bringing, but I'd love to hear from you because I don't want to assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to be better prepared and better anticipate that these are the things they'll be looking out for in terms of, geographic distribution and not, I mean, Fairfax is small. I mean, there is a limit to the number of sites we can work with. So hopefully it'll be like a different case for Fairfax. It'll not be, it'll not open up as much avenues. I'm hoping we can work it correctly, with them. Do a double check on the sites to make sure that the densities are appropriate. I mean, sometimes this thing comes up where they say you're counting too many units coming out of some of these sites. Show us examples of what has been built at these densities in either that community or surrounding communities. So we'll do a double check to make sure that the densities that we're counting are not, overly exaggerated. And make sure we're doing all that. I'm not sure to what extent SB 9 is getting reflected. It's been a hot sort of item in some communities about, residents eager to have those counted, and that city is sort of like drawing, sort of pushing back against that and not counting lot splits and so on in existing lots that may not materialize. So we need to be sure that what we're getting in with is realistic. Meets the smell test, and we have information to back it up, and we have analysis, and I think we'll make sure to do that so we don't have that back and forth. I also think SCD is pretty good about informally responding, so not everything needs to go through the first 90-day review period and then the next 60-day review cycle and so on. It's possible to work out smaller issues with them through like an email or something like that. They've been very, very responsive with that. I would say that they've been very good with that, yeah. I'm hopeful, I'm positive. I mean, that it should go through smoothly. Obviously, the timing is a challenge. We need to try to do our best to meet, the deadlines that are in front of us, but we are committed to it. And we are hoping to see this through to success, yeah.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And thank you for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
Madam Mayor, can I ask one more question? I don't know if you have any questions for Mr.
Of course.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for those initial responses. I just had a quick clarifying question. I know in our staff report, it had mentioned that, let me pull it up really quick. Sorry. We would have obviously Mr. Hill is the principal with the firm that's going to be the project manager for day-to-day contact. And it said with support from in-house teams, including yourself, but I think in the actual contract that we received, it was different. It was Mr. Diet, if I'm understanding that correctly, by the hours and by, so am I understanding that correctly, that he would be the other individual that would be a point of contact and not yourself?
I am definitely going to be a point of contact if David needs to reach out to me. Michael Diet will be focusing on the odds. So he's a zoning expert. So he has done probably more zoning ordinances than anyone else. So he will focus on that component and not on the housing element per se, except to the extent that there is something in the development regulations that should inform, the housing element itself, but that's unlikely to be the case. So that'll be his job to take the odds through to completion. I believe, the question has come up that, yes, the odds are good, but how do they fit in, with Fairfax, and how will they work, and how will they mesh with the zoning system you have and so on. So those are the kinds of issues, the nuts and bolts issues that he would be involved with. And he's a Marin County resident, he lives pretty close to Fairfax, yeah.
Oh, great. Yes, and I did see that the majority of his hours were allocated for odds and zoning. So thanks for pointing that out. I think that whole chart is actually extremely helpful for understanding where people are putting their time or projected to put their time, and then the cost associated with that. But just wasn't sure how much staff would engage with you versus Mr. Hill and Mr. Dyer.
Yeah, so Andrew has been working on Ross. So he totally understands, what's going on with, the traffic modeling, the wildfire risks and so on. I mean, I'm happy to be involved, but at this stage, I think he brings somewhat more of a local knowledge in terms of what's going on with the various organizations and mapping and so on, and Marin right next to you. Yeah, so.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions of Mr. Bhatia? Are you about to make a motion? Because I just have one more comment.
I just want to mention that I I am going to need to leave in a few minutes. So if we want to do a vote while I'm here, it's going to have to come pretty soon.
Okay, let me just, I just have one quick thing back to the website. David, if, I know there's still a lot to explore there, and we've already covered a lot with regard to Fairfax Speaks, but one consideration would be if we're not able to make edits going forward and it's just kind of in a frozen position, we have some type of headline at the top that says, you know, this was last updated. This data is at, you know, as of X date, you know, for current housing element to stay current, you know, go here, and point folks to our town website where we'll have the core elements and key updates.
Madam
Does
Mayor,
that make sense?
Yes, it does. Madam Mayor, if I could respond. I don't see this as being an issue. I'm sure that we can work with the prior consultant and Diet and Bhatia and internally in terms of bringing information forward. Our main objective, like I said earlier, is to make sure we capture that information and make sure it's well indexed and available to our citizens here in Fairfax, and we'll do that.
And if I just piggyback on that one, because again, looking at the proposal for the town of Fairfax, I'm sorry for like drilling into some of these things, but with regard to the website or any of that stuff, is that typically a job that an associate or a project assistant? There are a couple like titles for people that work at Diet and Bhatia. Would those sorts of jobs fall under those titles? I'm just trying to make sure that we don't miss out on something, like needing to have something clear in this document.
No, we can clarify that. Let me start and then Mr. Bhatia can add to this. But what is indicated in the proposal is that Diet and Bhatia would be providing regular updates or regular information to the town to put on the website. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's what you'll find there. Mr. Bhatia can kind of indicate, perhaps on his side, how that would happen in terms of, you know, who gathers that and who, you know, sends it forward to the town. I think we need to coordinate internally in terms of receiving that information and making sure that we put it up on our website. And we need to look into, as we've said before tonight, Fairfax Speaks and understand exactly how we can use that or where we go with that. And in any case, make sure that we retrieve that information and make sure it's brought forward and well indexed for the use of our citizens. But if Mr. Bhatia can kind of respond to the Vice Mayor's question about kind of who gathers that information and forwards it to the town. Rajiv, if you could respond, please.
Yeah, so the way the scope is currently structured, we would be giving actual substantive information to the town to be posting on its website. So that would not involve graphic designers and so on. But if you're happy with the current website and it just needs some polishing up and tune up, and we have the password for it, we have graphic designers in-house. There are 3 of them actually. And I'm sure we can work with that or whatever format it's set up in to try to polish that, clean it up, or make it more precise. And then if we want to post information there, we have the capability in-house to do that. But we would work with David and his team to make sure that that happens smoothly.
Perfect. That's good. I just want to make sure we didn't have to have like web development as like a job description in here with hours if there's an assumption that.
No, I mean, if you're just taking over, we're just taking over, but we're not like designing something from scratch here. But I mean, if we need to set something up in Wix or something like that, I'm sure we can do that. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Pardon me, Madam Mayor, I just want to make a time check. I know that Councilmember Kohler has to go.
Yeah, I don't know that any of us have any other questions.
I have one request.
Renee, could I make a motion? I really have to go to another.
You know what? I'm sorry. This is an opportunity we have that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and I guess you'll do the vote without me.
I'm sorry, but we're not going to. I don't think we should rush this. There will be 4 of us here. This is an opportunity we're not going to get.
Okay, I'm getting off the meeting because I have to go to another meeting, and I wish that there's an opportunity. Here's my thoughts, is we could do the vote now and you could make comments after the vote.
You know, I'd like to have a couple more things clarified before we have a motion made.
Barbara, why don't you just make a statement for the record that you're in support of moving forward with Diet and Bhatia?
Okay, I'm making a statement. I'm in full support of. I don't think I have to say that. It becomes.
Well, I'd like it captured in the minutes. Otherwise, the minutes don't capture it.
Okay. I, Barbara Kohler, council member, are making a statement for the record that I'm in full support of the resolution of the town council, the town of Fairfax, to authorize the town manager to execute an agreement with Diet and Bhatia urban and regional planners to complete the town's 6-cycle housing element and general plan update project. Thank you. I'm going to be signing off now.
Thank you.
Only because I have another meeting.
Bye. It's not a long request that I have. I just wondered if it would be appropriate to request of Mr. Bhatia and the firm that the 3 council members who are not on the subcommittee would have a chance, you know, a half an hour opportunity to make your acquaintance and share a little bit of our own perspectives and just to know you a little bit, or the project manager. You will be working closely with the subcommittee, but it would be great to share some thoughts. If you're amenable to that, if that works.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Andrew Hill sends us regrets. He had a hard stop, you know, at 5:30 today as well. So he could have attended otherwise, but it's just another commitment that he had as well. Otherwise, he would be here. Happy to, and I'm happy to be here with him. But I don't think you'll want me. You know, once you meet Andrew, he's great. He's likable. He's affable, and you will love him. Yeah. So.
Okay, great. And just for the record, I'm talking about individually, not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to, you know, meet with you individually just to gain, you know, I mean, with all of you, you know, all 5 of you, all 3 of you, as your desire may be, happy to check in with you individually. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mayor, if I may speak briefly, and then I would be prepared to offer a motion. Yeah. I just wanted to, and I really appreciate this discussion. I appreciate the public input. I understand the frustration. I wanted to just say 2 things very briefly. One is that it has certainly been a difficult year. You know that we lost our town manager and had to search for a town manager, had an interim town manager who was excellent and actually did some great things for the town while he was here. And now we found a permanent town manager who is excellent. And this takes time. This takes time to go through these transitions. I think we have successfully made these transitions. I think it's actually very good for the town, but it's a transition and it happened this year. We also lost our planning director, and that was unexpected, and that's been a big transition. Right now, we have an interim planning director who I wish we could keep forever, but that's not in the cards. We've also gone through 2 interim public works directors, and we now have a permanent public works director. More transitions. We have, in the meanwhile, due to public input and public demand and very, very valid public request, we have done some really major things this year, including the tenant protection and rent stabilization that we just did the first reading on. These things are huge, heavy lifts for staff and for council and for the public. We've done all that. We've just adopted the REACH codes for the 3-year cycle, which came right in the midst of all this. We've done, I won't even go into all the other things that we've done, but it's been a very full year and it's not even done yet. This is our 3rd council meeting within a week. Meanwhile, The other thing I wanted to say, so that's one. The other thing I wanted to say is that I heard it mentioned, and I assume that it's correct, that David Woltering, our current interim planning director, has worked with Diet and Bhatia before. That I would just like to recast that as being evidence of some sort of under the table relationship. It's actually quite the opposite. That is, when you're working with people on this complex a project and this large a project, it's a good thing that we have a planning director who has experience in this field. It's a good thing that our town manager has worked in another jurisdiction. It's a good thing that Diet and Bhatia have done many of these kind of projects before. And it's a good thing that people know each other, because you figure out how to work with each other and you get that figured out. That's a whole lot of working together on this kind of fast-paced, intricate, complex, multidimensional project, is to know each other and know how to work together. Right now, we have a council that knows how to work together, and we don't always agree on everything. We don't even always vote on the same way on everything, but we respect each other. We know how to work with each other, and we've found our roles in this process along with staff. This is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a sign that we all know each other and therefore actually there's some kind of under the table thing going on. It's quite the opposite. And I just say that having had experience on both sides of large contracts and relationships of this sort, it's really good. With that, I would be prepared to offer a motion.
Please.
I move that we adopt a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with Diet and Bhatia, urban and regional planners, to complete the town's 6th cycle housing element and general plan update project.
I'll second.
All in favor?
We need a roll call.
Oh, roll call.
I need to take a roll call.
Oh, please do.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Yes.
Councilmember Goddard.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cutrano.
Yes.
And Mayor Hellman.
Yes.
That's 4 ayes, and Councilmember Kohler is absent.
Motion passes. Thank you. David, thank you. Mr. Bhatia, thank you. Unless there's anything else, I'm ready to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.
Hearing nothing.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.